You know, when you look at my favorite race car drivers, this guy has always been in my top three. I am honored and excited to have Kyle Petty joining the podcast this week. Kyle, first off, thank you so much for your time today, but you've always been around racing. But what are some of the earliest memories that you have being in the sport?
Man, I don't have any. And I say that in all honesty because it's funny because I was born in June of 1960 and went to Daytona in July of 1960, and I've been going to the racetracks almost every weekend, or very few weekends have I missed in my whole life, and I'm 63 now. It was just always there. You know what I mean? It was it was always there when I was 5 or 6 years old and going to Daytona and being at the beach and being in the infield at the 500 and going to Greenville Pickens Speedway in South Carolina, in Greenville, South Carolina, to the dirt track, and just being nasty dirty when they throw you in the car to bring you home at 7 or 8 years old. So I don't know when it started because it's just always there.
So NASCAR fans are known for our passion, but Kyle, what are some memorable interactions that you've had with fans over the years?
Wow. You know what? The thing for me that's always memorable, and I'm going to say this, is my granddad raced, and then my dad raced, and I came along, and then Adam came along. So, you know, our family's been doing this for forever, but it is really cool. It always surprises me, and it always kind of gives you that funny feeling, man, that people do care about this sport. People do love this sport so much. I have a guy that will come up, and he'll say, hey, I want to show you a picture of my dad. He used to take me to the racetrack, and he'll say, and that's my dad, and that's me, when I was like 7 or 8 years old or 10 or 12 years old or whatever. And he'll say, and this is my 8-year-old boy, and I want his picture taken with you. And the first picture will be taken with my dad. Oh. You know, it'll be his dad, him at 7 or 8 years old, and my dad. And now I'm taking a picture with him and his son, you know, a generation later. So moments like that are really, really cool. And it lets you, to me, that's a NASCAR fan in a nutshell. They just, once they're a fan for life. And, you know, they latch onto a driver, man, and they are passionate about their drivers. That's for sure. If you don't believe fans are passionate about drivers, just get a job in TV and say something bad about their favorite driver and see how many tweets you get. You'll know that they love their drivers, man.
Now, Kyle, you had a seamless transition from being a driver in NASCAR to an analyst for NBC. What motivated you to take on that role, and what do you enjoy most about it?
All the same thing. What motivated me was I couldn't drive a race car anymore because you get to that point where you age out, and I couldn't do that. But if I wanted to be around race people, I had to find a job that kept me around race people because that's what I love, is race people. Being in that garage area, talking to drivers, talking to crew members, being around fans. So it was an easy step to go there, to go radio or to go TV. I'd have drove a truck if somebody let me drive a truck. I don't care, just to hang out and do it. So that was the impetus for me, was just to stay in the sport in some way, shape, or form. And TV's been fun. You know, I enjoy working with Dale Jarrett and Brad Daugherty and Junior and Burton and those guys, you know, and because they're race people. You know, people don't even think about Brad Daugherty as being a race guy, but he's been working on race cars in Asheville, North Carolina since he was 16 or 17 years old. He just happened to be 7 foot tall and be a number one draft choice and play in the NBA. That was just a side hustle for him. He laughed about it. He's like, racing's always been my main hustle. NBA was just my side hustle. So it's kind of cool just to be around people, the same thing, that just grew up in it and talk. And that's the best part about it. Working the TV side for me is being with those guys every week.
What advice would you give a young individual hoping to make it in the world of NASCAR?
You know what? I think there's probably a couple of things. If that's your dream and that's your passion, don't give it up. Don't give it up. Ride it as long as you can, man. So many times I see kids and I see people just in general life who have a goal and have a desire, and you know, things get hard and they just like, maybe I wasn't meant to do this. Maybe I should go do something else. It's a tough road, and especially at this point in time. And you hate to say it, but it's just all about dollars, man. It's an expensive sport. It's an expensive sport to get into. It's an expensive sport to stay in, but it's a great sport. And you can talk about the drivers. Denny won last week, and that was Denny's 51st win. And my dad won over 200 races, but my dad will happily tell you that he won 200, but he lost, 967 or something. You know what I mean? So the disappointments far outweigh the wins. But the other thing I tell people, in a joking way, but it's the truth, when you get to this sport and you get to the top of it and you get to the cup level and the NASCAR Xfinity or whatever, chances are there's going to come a day you get fired, man. And you better have thick skin because you're going to have to go find another job. And that's just the way it is. This is not a sport for the faint of heart where you think, man, I'm going to settle into this job for the next 25 years and just ride this gravy train. It only works that way for great guys, great drivers like Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson, Danny Hamlin, guys like that who are able to maintain. But even the great Kyle Busch has to move along sometimes, and that's just the way the sport is.
Now, Kyle, you've been behind the wheel of some of the most iconic and coolest paint schemes in NASCAR history, driving for Hot Wheels, Pete, Coors, Georgia Pacific, Mello, Yello, and others. But which paint scheme really stands out the most for you?
You know what? It's funny. The Mello Yellow one always does. Always, because it was a tie to Days of Thunder. And then we ran it on the racetrack and had success with it. And then, 20 years later, 30 years later, Kyle Larson and those guys run the number 42 and run it down at Darlington during the throwback weekend. And 30 years later, the paint scheme still looks as good on a new car as it did on that 92 Pontiac. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
That's fascinating to me that you can throw back to a paint job like that and throw back to a time in a car, and it looks just as good. And, Alpha Prime, an Xfinity series, they ran a Hot Wheels car this past time at Darlington, and it was just bad to the bone, man. I think for me, the Hot Wheels car and the Mello Yello cars are my two most favorite because it appealed to such a wide audience. The kids liked it. The adults, it brought back memories for them for the Hot Wheels car. Some bad. I know I got a lot of spankings with Hot Wheels tracks, I can tell you that. So that those are bad memories. But it was just, I think those two paint schemes for me are the ones that stand out the most.
Did you get to do anything cool promotionally with those sponsors over the years?
Yeah, man, we did tons of stuff. Oh, my gosh, man. Twice, I think, during the time that I drove for Hot Wheels, because this is a record that just continues to be broken as the world's longest Hot Wheel track. I was with Joey Logano about 3 years ago, and he broke it. He did a deal with Hot Wheels, and they broke the record. And from the time we set it, a couple of times it was like it was inside somebody's living room. When Joey broke it, it was inside a race shop, and it went under cars, through cars, around cars. It was incredible how long it was. But those things were fun. And doing the Mello Yello stuff, you got to do a lot of stuff with Coca-Cola through their bottlers and through their promotions. We gave away a Hummer. I did some stuff with Randy Travis at the time. Did some stuff with the NFL. Did some stuff. Listen, Major League Baseball, NBA, Coca-Cola touches everybody, man. That's just the way it was. So Mello Yello was really cool.
Full disclosure here, Kyle, I have one of your 42 Mello Yello cars on my desk. And I tell you what, anytime anybody walks into my office, it's a conversation piece. And I love it because it's been one of my favorite paint schemes since I was a kid. But shifting gears here, Kyle, you've been involved in country music since the 80s. What prompted you to pick up a guitar and start singing?
So that goes back to the 70s, to the early 70s. I had seen people on TV play guitars, but had never really paid that much attention. And Marty Robbins, great country singer, 50s, 60s, and early 70s, he drove a race car. He would run Daytona or Talladega and run Charlotte sometimes, run some of the bigger racetracks. And a lot of times we'd be staying at a hotel, and he'd pull out his guitar and sit by a pool and sing. And I was like, man, that is the coolest thing I have ever seen, man. The sound coming from that little box, just amazing, that what he could do with a guitar. I learned to play when I was 12, and, I was in the high school marching band when I was in high school, so I've been a band geek and a music geek my whole life. So the music goes back a long, long way. Not as far as racing. Like I said, born one month and went to a racetrack the next. It took 10 or 12 years for music to hit, but when it hit, it's always been a part of it.
So who are some bands or singers in your current musical rotation?
American Aquarium, the Avett Brothers. I listen to people I grew up listening to still. John Prine, Harry Chapin, Jim Croce. I got all that old stuff. But I listen to Lyle Lovett, so many, just stuff like that. It's crazy. I'm pretty much all over the board. Randy Rogers Band. I'm pretty much all over, but it's mostly singer-songwriters.
Yeah.
More so than bands and stuff. I like people that sit down and write their stuff and then put it out there and see where it goes.
Kyle, for those who are listening and might not know, what is the Victory Junction Gang Camp, and what does this organization mean to you?
Yeah, well, it means everything to me. Victory Junction is a camp for children with serious medical needs and chronic medical needs. And we built the camp after Adam was killed at New Hampshire in a racing accident in 2000. The camp opened its doors in 2004. So next year is our 20th anniversary. We've seen almost 120,000 kids have come through camp or or through our REACH program that we go to hospitals with. And, it's just a camp for children who have illnesses that they will have their entire life, and serious illnesses. I mean, Crohn's disease, full-blown AIDS, blood disorders, certain forms of cancer. We also see, diabetes and asthma, and these are diseases that people, somebody. But these kids, a lot of these kids that we see will spend time in a hospital each year because they have it so bad. They're so sick. Yeah. So we have ropes course and fishing and swimming pool and archery and everything they do in any camp that you've ever been to, but it's all in a medically safe environment. We have 1 or 2 doctors that are there full time. We'll have as many as 30 or 40 nurses on staff when the kids are at camp, when we see 120 kids a week. It's a camp, but we joke, but it's the truth. It's a hospital disguised as a camp because we can do chemo there, we can do dialysis there, we can do certain procedures there that fulfill the medical needs of these kids. So it's a fun place. We build it in Adam's memory, and that's what makes it special. So it's always going to be something that means so much. I tell people all the time, when kids leave and they have that Adam Petty smile on their face, I know Adam's still here with us.
I love that. I love the organization itself. For those listening who want to volunteer, maybe their time or financially, how can they do that?
Yeah, just listen, go to our website, which is victoryjunction.org, victoryjunction.org. Just thumb through it, man. Just see. We have groups all over America that knit quilts for us, make teddy bears. Every child that comes to camp gets a teddy bear and a quilt, a little blanket to take home to remember camp by. And, we've had kids come back from the time they're 6 to 15 or 16, and they're still carrying that original blanket and that original teddy bear because that's the one that made an impact on them in the beginning. So whether you can volunteer for a weekend or for a day or, whatever it may be, it's the fans and the people out there that donate $5 a month that really honestly keep camp up and running, because without their help and their prayers, camp wouldn't be here.
You're in season 3 of Dinner Drive. Kyle, for those who might not be familiar with the show, what is it about?
Oh, you know what? Thank you for asking. So Dinner Drive came about during the pandemic. Everybody was sitting at home, couldn't do anything, and going stir crazy. So I watched everything I could watch on TV, and I just came up with an idea to just ask celebrities, what was a sentimental car? I don't want to know what your baddest car is or what your most expensive car is. Just a sentimental car, a car that in your lifetime has passed through you, that you've been a part of, that meant something to you. And then we sat down and talk about their life and, how they got to be whoever they were. And it's been amazing. We started with Dale Jr., and his was an 88 Silverado pickup that when he was in high school, his dad made him work at the dealership in the service department and made him pay off the pickup. And his first date, his first kiss, everything was in that pickup. Then I went to Pitbull. Pitbull, he owns part of Trackhouse Racing, but I went to Pitbull, and his was a 76 Ford Pinto. He grew up in Miami without air conditioning, and his mom would put him in the car at night and ride him around town with the windows down so they could sleep. And that was just a sentimental car. Here's a guy known as Mr. Worldwide. Ric Flair's was a 65 Dodge Dart. Davis Love didn't have a car. Davis Love had a boat from where his dad would take him fishing. Those were memories that came back to him. So it's been incredibly interesting to see the cars. But we only spend a small amount on the car, maybe 5 minutes on the car. And then we start talking. And some of the stories from Terry Bradshaw, from John Snyder, from Mario Andretti, from Jeff Gordon, from Coach Gibbs, some of the people that we've had, Bill Engvall. It's an eclectic group of people, I will say that. We did Lyle Lovett, and we did the Amos brothers, too. So we did those guys. We did John Rich, did John Oates. I mean, it's just been an eclectic group, but it's been a lot of fun to get to know these people in a little bit different way and let people kind of see that they weren't born superstars. They worked hard to get to where they were at, and there was a lot of disappointment, but they got there.
Now, episodes of Dinner Drive, that airs on the Circle Network. Is that correct?
Yes, it's on the Circle Network, or it streams on Peacock.
Awesome.
So it's streaming on Peacock, too, so you can pick it up multiple places.
All right, Kyle, my final question for you. Who's going to be in the Final Four at Phoenix?
Dang, man, I knew that was going to be one of your questions. I've been dreading it. You know what? It is so funny. So I took a lot of heat. I will say this. So I picked the first 4 out, and I got all 4 of them wrong.
I did see where you picked Kyle Busch, and I was with you on it. I was like, that makes perfect sense.
But one of the reasons I picked is because it is so hard to pick the first 4 out, and so hard to pick I don't like to say, well, this guy's going to be eliminated. He's got no chance. And the other thing is, listen, Ricky Stenhouse, win the Daytona 500. That makes your year. I don't care what you do the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Michael McDowell, those guys have had phenomenal years. And, man, I was not ready to give up on them yet. I wanted to give them a little bit more hope, and I wanted to hope with them that they were going to make it a little bit further. But it's a crazy year. There's 2 past champions with Harvick and Logano out. And if you look at Ricky Stenhouse, Ricky and McDowell and Joey, there's 3 Daytona 500 winners and 2 past champions that got eliminated in the first round.
Yeah.
That says a lot about the system. That says a lot about the system and where it's at. It does reward the people who are the best at this time. As I look at it, Denny Hamlin could honestly be 3-0 right now. He should have won Darlington. Thought he had a loose wheel, I think, at Darlington. Should have won there. Should have won at Kansas. Just got in a different place. Had a great car there and won at Bristol. So he could be 3-0. And I think giving Martin Truex a second chance and coming back from the brink, going in below the line and coming out in, I think Martin's going to be tough. I really do think Martin's going to be tough. And I put Kyle Larson in that group, and I put William Byron in that group. So those 4, I think it's just going to be Hendrick against Gibbs, Toyota against Chevy. I don't see any of the Ford teams having a shot at anything. And, God, I would love to see Brad Kay or Chris Buescher and one of those guys at RFK break into it, but I just don't see them being able to sustain when it gets tough here. Listen, I was wrong on the first 4, so I might be wrong on the last 4, but I think it's going to be Chevy versus Toyota and Hendrick versus Gibbs.
I got to agree with you, too. I've been saying that since the round of 12, that it's going to be Toyota, Chevy, Hendrick, Gibbs. Championship up for grabs this year, but I promise you we won't hold it against you if you're wrong. Kyle, it has been a true honor to talk with you. I've honestly wanted you on the podcast since I've started this, so thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me this morning.
NBC analyst and NASCAR legend Kyle Petty joining us today on the Days of Thunder NASCAR podcast.